Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Luke Hart here, surfboard shaper, surfboard geek, surfboard reviewer. Don't know why I always introduce myself for ages, it's pathetic. Hi, I'm Luke. Right, what we got here? Something that I vowed I'd never do, but I'm doing it because we can all change. I am reviewing a longboard template, something that I designed absolutely years ago, a little brief backstory into longboards. I had one of my best friends, Adam Griffiths. You may or may not have heard of him. He is a world-class longboarder and a really, really good friend of mine. And when I started surfing, he wanted to ride my boards, but I'd never made longboards. So from complete scratch, we started designing our own longboards. And Bearman ended up getting onto the world tour of the WSL and the Relic Tour, which was at the time Joel Tudor's alternative tour. And he got, in 1 year, he got a third and second in both those tours, which is the highest ranked UK surfer ever on the Longboard World Tour. And he did it on the boards that we designed. Now, subsequently, what happened is the Longboard Tour went weird, in my opinion, and started having to ride single fins and sort of digressing. Is digressing a word?
Yeah.
Regressing.
Both. Digressing is going in a different direction, regressing is going back.
Yeah, so they did a little bit of digressing, then they regressed, in my opinion, and went for chunky single fins, and it was more like trying to get the soul out of surfing, but then making a competition out of it, and no one cared. I sort of lost interest, and Bearman stopped competing as well. That was kind of the end of it, and I never really thought about longboards ever since, but I have always made his model.
The least professional thing that I've ever done. How cool is that?
It's really cool. I like the extra wrinkles that you've added in my face. Or is that real?
Yeah, mate.
Yeah. Coming soon.
Coming soon.
More on that later. Right. Longboards went a bit more classic, and throughout the years I didn't pay much attention to them. I designed this board, I put so much energy into it, and that's the kind of person that I am. I get really, really fixated on learning how to do something. Once I get to a level that doesn't push me anymore, I kind of fall away from it. But what I've noticed is over the years, I've always sold it. I've resold it to people that love it. I'm still selling it today, and we've never done a review video on it. I've never really talked about it. So one thing that I learned when I was trying to design longboards is that there's a counterintuitive notion. The most high performance longboard you can get means it's the easiest to manipulate and maneuver. Therefore, it's easier to surf for the general surfer. So if you get a full log single fin and you paddle into a wave and stand up, it takes a lot of skill, high amounts of skill to be able to control that, getting the speeds that you want, climb up to the nose, and that's the beautiful art of single fin longboarding. You know, I was joking earlier about the comps digressing. It's an art form. I guess I wasn't joking. I don't massively see the point in doing comps with it. I just like watching it. But these boards are a bit more, you can be a bit more aggressive. And when the World Tour was more aggressive and effectively shortboarding longboards, this design made that really easy. So for someone who doesn't really care for traditional longboarding and just wants a longer board because it's more fun in small waves and still wants to kind of hit some end sections, do some nose rides, a bit of everything. Someone who's not so set into a subculture, this board is that, and it's always been that. And this one here is so longboard competition longboarders start at 9 foot across the deck, whereas this is actually an 8.2 version. It's an 8.2 version because the customer wanted a shorter longboard, and there's no rules when you're custom ordering a board. And I've adopted the shape into a smaller board, and that's what I love about surfboards. It's about making what you want out of it, not having rules. You know, like the first thing you'd do if you wanted to make a longboard more performance is you would make it smaller, wouldn't you? And then it's not a longboard anymore. So, wow, is a shorter longboard a massive mid-length?
I know what exactly it is.
Oh, do you?
It's a skinny ass mid.
Oh my word, we're hitting genres.
Look at that.
Well, I used to make this in a 9.2, a 9.0, and then I used to make an 8.0 version as well. But the fundamentals are the same. So I'm going to take you through the fundamentals of this board. Firstly, we'll start off. It is a pulled-in tail relative to the shape, and it kind of has a long, elongated hip, and that then starts into curves into about here. Then where the wide point comes in, which is quite far up the board, it has a really parallel rail and it maintains that width all the way through the nose. And basically what that's giving you is it's giving you the pivot off the tail that you're going to need, because your feet are going to be moving quite a lot on a longboard, and the further you get back on the tail, the easier it is to turn. And you're also going to have stability when you want to nose ride and lock in your edge and your rail. So I was really, really proud of this outline, and I think that's why I never really changed it. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but it is ever so clean. It really flows into a longer parallel rail up here, and then it just falls into that tail. So it's really easy to turn. You don't have to jump all the way back and completely stop it. You can kind of maneuver it a bit more like a shortboard. This particular one is actually epoxy PU, but I really like it in the EPS epoxy to get the most out of it in terms of performance for someone who just wants to own a longboard for the smaller days, and get the epoxy. Rocker. So the rocker is high on the tail and then medium high for a longboard on the nose, but the key point is the bottom of the board is brought forward, which stretches out the curve of the tail, so that when I'm sat here, if you can see, because there's not loads and loads of curve, my board's not like lifting all the way up here, so I'm not stalling loads. So when I'm stood pretty neutral, when I'm stood on the tail to do a turn, I'm not completely, having the board up here and pivoting loads and loads. It's quite a fluid feeling board. And then equally, as it lifts into the nose, there's not much as well, so that when you're sitting on the nose of the board to try and do a hang 5 or a hang 10 or a hang 11. I'm not sure if I invented hang 11, but I always found it really fun.
So that again, you're not sure what?
If I invented the hang 11. As in, I've never actually completed the manoeuvre, but I coined the phrase. Yeah. For those of you who don't know what a hang 11 is, let's just give you a minute. You got it.
Close your eyes and visualise.
The female version is the hang 12. Think about it.
Yeah, literally.
Oh, fuck, right. So the rocker's quite high. Fuck.
Sorry.
No hang 11s.
No.
So the idea of the rocker is basically nothing dramatic happens to the other end of the board whilst you're opposite side, so you can maintain control. Coupled with the concaved nose, which I'll talk about a bit more in detail, and the parallel rails, this nose is actually really stable. For how thin the nose is, it's actually a really good nose rider, and I kind of want to use old footage of Bearman using it, but people think that you need thick boards that just sort of truck along for nose riding. It's not the case. You need something to lock in. If you're going too fast, you will lose control. Your fin will slide out. It's about being able to lock in, and I always found for Bearman, he'd lock in really, really well, and he was a big guy. Bearman was like 85 kg at the time, riding these 60 litre longboards. And I always thought that it was about the benefit of going as thin as you can to get as much flex in the board and as much lift as you can here, but also for the turning radius, having that flatter curve in the tail with less swing weight by having loads and loads of foam forward, just gave it that balance of something that was easy to maneuver and then kind of easy to lock in on the nose as well. Bottom shape, kind of nothing crazy going on, but at the same time there's lots and lots of subtle changes that you have to blend in. So there is a small amount of spined V that goes out of the tail, nothing too crazy, and then it starts into a spiral V, which is basically means that there's single concave either side of the V, so there's lift through here, but the bottom shape is actually a V. It's not a concave bottom, so there's concave inside the convex. Spiral V apparently. Right. That separates into here, then the board then starts to have a really soft V as it comes through here, and that V, the shape of that V maintains through the rail all the way in here, which works in conjunction with the sort of boaty kind of hull and rail I've got going here. Then inside that is a single concave. The single concave runs kind of far down the board. I found it easier to sort of blend and not so abrupt in terms of walking the board if you could gradually pull that single in. So it kind of starts here and it deepens at the point here where you'd get the most amount of curve in the rocker to flatten it a little touch more, just adding to that lift in the nose. And then the rail is hard edged through here, almost shortboard-esque. And I run the hard edge pretty high up the board. It kind of doesn't stop to about here, which is coming up to halfway, not quite halfway of the board, but it's actually, that's not that normal for longboards. Most of the longboards you'll find is like 50-50 edges and stuff, which are kind of hard to turn, hard to release, and quite unresponsive. Anyway, rails, so hard edge through here. comes up high, and it starts softening. As the rail softens, the apex of the rail lifts. So it's almost like a twisted rail. If you can imagine the apex lower in the tail and higher in the nose, and it kind of just gradually twists up into this kind of hulled nose. And the idea is that you're then sitting on the bottom curve while you're on the nose, so it's harder to submerge. And I also find that that gives you a little bit of forgiveness, having that boaty nose. If you're catching your nose, don't get me wrong, if you're trying a massive turn and you catch your nose on a longboard, you're probably gone. But it does feel like it gives you just a little bit more forgiveness through the littler turns and just smashing one off the end and stuff. So it's just a nice fluid feeling, kind of easy. Again, I keep saying it, easy to surf board. Fin setup wise, I've always run it as a 2+1. That's what they were all surfing when I was designing it, and you can surf it as a single fin, and it's a little bit purer in form and a little bit less drag, but probably harder to surf and harder to do the turns. So it really depends what you want. As a 2+1 setup, I preferred that, but when it's really small, if you just whack a single fin, it's kind of nice. You don't really need those side fins because you're only kind of turning, setting rail and going along, but it does make it a little bit faster whilst you're sat there doing nothing. It really depends what you're trying to get out of the board. And if you don't know and if you're not sure, you can always ask. In terms of waves that you'd surf this board in, there's not really a particular wave set. The smaller you go, the more waves you're going to get on a longer board. So it will go in anything sort of ankle high. And then the bigger you go, the harder a longer board is going to be to control. But, you know, there's no reason why. I've seen a lot of people at our local beach surfing longboards as their step-up board when Fistral gets big. So it will kind of go in anything. It's more a style of surfing, is it? It's that slightly cruisier, slightly more stable platform surfboard, and then we've tried to, around that remit, try to make it as manoeuvrable as possible, and this is kind of what we've ended up with. I really want to clarify what this board is. First, you've got your fishes and your shortboards and your hybrids and your mini mids and your mids and your skinny arse mids. Then you've got your longboards, your pigs, your gliders and your guns. Bring it back to mids and longboard. In between there, that area, that grey area, is a performance longboard. And a performance longboard means it's easier to control. That is where this sits in the market. If you were looking for a longboard that's easy to control, this is your thing. We can do it from 8 foot to sort of 9'4". In terms of the surfer who wants to surf it, I mean, obviously it was designed for a professional longboarder sort of 10 years ago, but the reality is that it works brilliantly for anyone looking for a bit more confidence out of their surfboard, something that's really easy and stable to surf. So whether you're a beginner surfer looking for your first hardboard, whether you're sort of a bit of a bay warrior who just wants to catch the waves early, or whether you're a shortboarder or a more proficient surfer who just wants a really fun, easy to use longboard that they can still tear about. It's those kind of remits, I guess. It definitely isn't for beef. Beef doesn't do longboards. For the majority of people who want to surf bigger boards, they want it for the stability and the easy wave catching, but a lovely bonus is that they can control it still. And with those big single fins, I find them really hard to control myself, and I know other people that do. So yeah, so smaller surfers, people that are less concerned about the specific art of longboarding and more just want to utilise a longboard as a surfboard, there's your people. We're going to put a link on the website that you can go and custom order, and we will be putting some stock into the shop for next year, I'd say now, because Christmas is coming. Yeah, so that is the all-new performance longboard from Forth. Very excited. What am I getting myself into? Back into the longboard game. Look out, Ben, I'm coming for you. Not really. I don't want to make that many. That's it, that's done. Joan's gonna have a hard time stitching this one together, I am sure. But like, comment, subscribe, more review videos coming soon. We'll see you next time. Cheers.